After the brutal killing of that captured Jordanian pilot, carefully scripted, filmed, and broadcast to the world, King Abdullah retaliated and called the battle against ISIS the Third World War. Joel Rosenberg is author of the new book, Third Target. He says King Abdullah fully understands that he is in a winner-take-all showdown with ISIS. Joel joins us now live. Joel, good to see you today.
Good to see you as well. Thank you, Shannon.
Now, you are very familiar, having lived and worked in that region quite a bit. What do you make about the response that we saw from the Jordanian Empire, and where do you think we go from here? Do you think those who live and breathe and work in that region have a different understanding than we do here in the U.S.?
Well, the contrast between President Obama's response to Americans being beheaded and King Abdullah's response is striking. You know, President Obama was with the King Abdullah the day that the video was released of the Jordanian pilot being burned alive. The king was not on the president's schedule that day. He was in Washington, and the president only added him in because of that murder, and they only spent 20 minutes together. But what did the king do? He went right back. He suited up in fatigues. He started bombing ISIS, and he hanged two ISIS people that have been captured. He understands this is a war, and he understands that he is at the center of it. And it's interesting, in the 60 Minutes interview you just referenced, when he called it a third world war, he said it's a war inside Islam. President Obama is deeply conflicted over whether this is a battle that has anything to do with Islam. But the king, who is a descendant of Muhammad, knows it's a battle inside Islam and against radical Islam.
Well, and I don't want to get too deep into the theological weeds, but you've written a number of books about this. In your book on the so-called 12th Imam, or these end-time prophecies that certain factions of Islam, not the majority of Muslims out there, but there are certain factions who adhere to a very radical, specific end-time theology, and that ISIS is sort of in the business of, they want to launch an Armageddon-type end-of-the-world situation. They think it's what they need in prophecy to bring about their end goals. Do you think that we get that? Do you think our administration gets that?
No, and that's because the president is saying from the top and throughout the administration that this isn't an Islamic problem. You're right that the vast majority of Muslims don't, this is not them. They're not cutting off people's heads, and they never will. But the radicals are being driven by their interpretation of Islam. And it's important. This is what motivates them. This is why it's not a jobs issue. It's not a poverty issue. It's a radical Islamic theology issue and an eschatology issue. They do want to set up a caliphate, an Islamic kingdom, which is really an end times theology in their view. They believe it will hasten the end of days. My new novel, The Third Target, is really about ISIS being a threat to Israel, the United States, and Jordan. And what's interesting, of course, it's been out 5 weeks now on the bestseller list, but it really takes us into this threat that is actually not fiction right now. This is very real.
Yeah, I was one eschatology class away from a theology minor in college, but I find there's so much that I'm learning by reading about what these specific factions believe. And for those who want to get some education on this, your books are a great way of doing that, some fiction, some nonfiction, but a great way of getting a better understanding of why some of the decisions are made and who the players are and what their interests are in these games that are not games. I mean, the end game of what they hope to bring about.
Right.
I would recommend those as an entertaining but very educational way to get up to speed on some of these issues. Joel, always good to see you. Thank you so much. Come back soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Shannon.